Hello, hello, and welcome to Workshop Wednesday. Today is actually National Crazy Day, and this is a really good picture for that. I've never actually seen what I can only assume is a horse in roller skates. So there you go. If today is Crazy Day, and if you're feeling a little crazy, I can't think of anything better than this. We are actually going to go into strategy sessions, and some of this I know drives you nuts. So maybe this works out perfectly well for today. Auditing your Google Analytics setups. Again, this is not so much on the implementation end, but for those of you on the strategy end, or if you're trying to figure out what needs to be improved, or what sort of your next basic steps are in Google Analytics once you get everything at least sort of initially tracking the things you should look for. That's what we're going to talk about today in this particular strategy session. Of course, my name is Chris Mercer. I do go by Mercer, and I'm the co-founder here at measurementmarketing.io, where you can find our content on such incredible platforms like Digital Marketer, Conversion Excel, Social Media Examiner, Seriously Simple Marketing, and others around the web. As with all these workshops, one thing, especially with this one, because I'm going to cover a lot of different areas of Google Analytics, and we're going to go through and sort of say, like, here's the thing you want to look at, and here's why, and everything like that. Just get one idea, one actionable thing that you can actually do. Practice that, then you come back, rewatch this workshop, jump on the next new thing. If you try to do it all at once, it's a ticket to getting frustrated and overwhelmed. So awesome that you're taking notes on all of this stuff, but really just make sure you take action on one thing at a time, build your skills, and then you come back and do this again. All right, without further ado, strategy session, auditing your Google Analytics setup. Now, we're going to, as we always do with these workshops, cover the 5 pillars of measurement marketing in particular, how they relate to this particular workshop. So number one is planning. You got to make sure you're building your measurement marketing plan. And in the audit, that's very important because you want to be thinking about what types of questions you want to get answers to. Where are you going to get those answers from? What type of data are you going to need? And that's going to be coming from analytics. So you got to make sure that you plan out that sort of thing. Then you go through the build out, and that's where you're actually getting things up and running using Tag Manager and Google Analytics. And obviously, the build is going to be coming into this audit stage as well. The reports, if you get the reports out of something like Google Data Studio, but if the information that it's getting, that Data Studio gets from, which in this case would be analytics, if that is wrong or just not what we call the useful truth, then your reports aren't going to be any good. So you've got to make sure that you audit your Google Analytics to make sure that you're providing proper data, that useful truth that we like to call it. Then, of course, once you have that, you can actually begin to forecast and ultimately optimize your own marketing so you can start taking marketing actions to get better results for your funnels. Now, I'm just going to jump into Google Analytics at this point, and we're going to go into the Google Merchandise Store because they've got some sample data. They've got a ton of stuff back here for us, and I'm really going to take this as a basic client who came to me, or maybe it's my own company, and I've got some revenue and everything, sort of the basic stuff in there, and I just want to see at this point what's working, what's not, what do I need to do next in terms of my setup, in terms of getting that useful truth. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at the admin section, believe it or not. We're going to go into admin, and we've got our 3 main areas here. I'm going to look in the view settings. I want to make sure that I have multiple views. That is the very first thing you need to do. Most people, most companies that we work with just have one view, that very basic all website data view. And you can see here that Google has done a great job of creating multiple views. So they've got one master view, that's the one that they're currently using. They've got a test view, and they've got the raw data view. The raw data view, believe it or not, was the all website data view. They just renamed it. And that's kind of their backup data view, right? So they've got this. The test view is where they're doing a bunch of different tests, and of course the master view. Now, why do you want different views? Because your master view might be where you're getting all your report information from, and that's what Data Studio is hooking into and all of that fun stuff for your dashboards. And maybe it's got certain goals and everything that are set up for some of your funnels. The test might be when you're playing around with your setups, and you would use that for Google Analytics, but not really for real world sort of marketing reporting. And of course, the raw data is if everything hits the fan and you mess something up by creating a filter or something like that, where your implementer does, where you lose data and you need a backup. That's what this is for, this raw data view. I'm going to give you another view on what ours looks like so you can kind of see ours. And let's see, pop into the 2018 version. Let's do that. We'll start here. And you can see that we do the same thing, just at a little bit more. So we have all of these views. These are Google Data Studio data source. We actually created a view just for that. So it was very apparent for everybody on our team which view they would need to use for Google Data Studio. That's why the GDS is there. And we've got different views that are set up for different funnels or to answer different questions. So we have one that is a view that's set up with goals that are specific to our free resources or user ID information. Others for our win courses that we have. We have a test one that you can see here. We've got different test ones that these all have our team in there, and they're all testing different things. And then down here, this is our backup data. This is the exact same thing as Google's raw data. When Google Merchandise Store set up theirs, we just call it backup data. So that's it. And DNU for us stands for do not use. Everybody knows they should really not be using that view for anything. That's only there in case of emergency. And if we need data, we can go to that, which fortunately has never happened. But that's why it's a backup, right? That's my insurance policy. So anyway, that's the view. So that's the first thing that I would take a look at. And I'm going to go back to the Google Analytics one so we can continue there. So in Google Analytics, when you're in your views, number one, make sure you've got multiple views. Number two, make sure you're taking advantage of these views. So in your views, in this case, we're going to stick with the master view that Google Analytics has here. We have our goals that are situated. So I want to see, are we using goals, right? And are they actually turned on and are they collecting data? So very first thing, many times I've gone into an analytics setup that has goals that were expired, nobody turned them off. Maybe they say, like in this case, maybe it is engaged users, but it's really not collecting engaged users. It's just a broken goal. You see that stuff all the time. So poking through here just to sort of say, and again, if it's you that set this up, you can ask these questions. Otherwise, go to your implementer and say, hey, these goals that we have set up, can you confirm that they're working? Is engaged users defined as this? Is entered checkout people who truly entered the checkout process? And just look at the numbers. Do they make sense for what you know about your business, right? Maybe if you know that, no, we've got thousands of people a day who enter our cart, well, 299 in the last 7 days doesn't seem right, if that was the case. But if you're like, yeah, no, maybe about 300 people a week, that's about right. Okay, cool. Then we know that goal is good. But that's just a real quick cursory audit. And all you're looking for in this audit process is where things might not be providing the useful truth and might need a little bit more of a setup in those. The next thing you look at is under filters. Now, filters, again, you should have some sort of filter. At the very least, something that includes the host name, because a lot of the cases you'll have a cross-domain issue where your site goes from mysite.com to infusionsoft.com and then back to mysite.com, and you see things like that all the time. So you want to make sure that host name's in there so you can see everything. And then you'll see various other filters that are available to you. We actually have an entire workshop just on filters and the ones that we recommend that you have. So we have a bunch of them, ones that combine all the different Facebook traffic and ones that make sure that your traffic tags are coming in the correct order and a lot of other stuff. So, but you should be taking advantage of filters in your master view. Now, what should never have a filter? Your raw data view. You will never, ever filter your raw data view. But the rest of them you definitely should. E-commerce settings sounds sort of obvious, but you do want to make sure that it's turned on because it's not on by default. You have to turn it on, and then you have to decide if you're using it enhanced or not. E-commerce, think of it, we have an entire workshop. That's an entirely different topic. So we do have an entire workshop on both the standard e-commerce support as well as enhanced e-commerce support. Calculated metrics you may or may not have. So you can come in here. If you don't have them, that's okay. But if you do, those are something you can customize. Revenue per user is definitely useful. Conversion rate per user, also useful. I would add those in, and again, we have a calculated metrics workshop for those that need to set that up as well. The rest of these, segments, all that sort of stuff, you can play with these, and these are a little bit more of advanced, but they're not necessarily what I would say is in the audit section, not in the very basics, right? Mostly it's just in these 4 categories that you would look at. Also in the view settings, I'm going to click in this real quick just to cover it. Down here, make sure you check on bot filtering. I have very rarely ever seen this be an issue. In fact, I've actually never seen this being an issue to be checked, but it is unchecked by default. And why would you want to have, might as well use the power of Google to get rid of all those bots and spiders, right? So get rid of them. So check that box, make sure you have that. And again, we have other workshops that go into the intricacies of these settings, but at least make sure that one's there. So from an audit perspective, in the back end of Google Analytics, the very first thing that I do. Second, I will come into the property settings themselves. I'll take a look at all products to see which products are connected in. In this case, we've got Google Ads and Search Console. But if nothing's linked, I might want to do that. I might want to make sure that Search Console is linked if I have a Search Console account, which you most likely do. And if you are using Google Ads, previously known as AdWords, then you want to make sure that Google Ads is linked and its data is flowing through as well. So there's those things that you want to make sure that you're able to take care of. Other than that, in the back end here, there's one other area that I want to cover that I think is super important. That's in this tracking info. In session settings here, so you can come into the session settings, And you can see here that you have timeouts, and these are something that you can customize on your own. But if you have, for example, if you do video sales letters or some other reason why somebody might stay on your site and for a longer period than just 30 minutes without taking any sort of action because they were watching a video or something like that. Well, if that's the case, you might want to expand this thing out. So make sure you take a look at that. Under your data retention, data collection, you're going to make sure that you take a look at these, because these are something that are policies that you're going to need to agree to, and help you to connect the different devices as users cross different devices. There's some things back there that you can play around with as well. And the big one here is referral exclusion list. So by default, you should see your own website here. Now, if for whatever reason you don't, it just means that it was a much older Google Analytics account that was migrated into this newer, what they call universal analytics. But everybody, if you started a new one, if your account's remotely new, you will automatically see your name in here. And if you don't see your name in here, you should add in your primary domain name, not the subdomain. So you see here it's just googlemerchandisestore.com and not shop.googlemerchandisestore.com. It's the main site. So you always do the main domain in these. And what you'll want to put in here, this is part of cross-domain tracking. In our case, and I want to show you ours just so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. We did an audit, and we know all of the different domains that a user might actually crisscross through on their way through a purchase or becoming a lead or anything like that. And we put all of those domains in here. So Gendy is Webinar Jams. We have Gendy. We've got PayPal. We've got Infusionsoft.app and Infusionsoft.com because we use Infusionsoft, they show up both ways. We have and Measurement Marketing. Of course, we've got Vimeo.com. We were doing some tests on the Vimeo platform for cross-domain purposes. And so these are all of the different domains that somebody might come through. And I want to make sure that my traffic, if I came in through Facebook ads and I ended up on Gendy and then back on Infusionsoft and then back on a measuremarketing.io thank you page, in that session, I want to make sure that Facebook gets credit for that. And you've got to set this up. This is something called cross-domain tracking. So a dead giveaway is if your referral exclusion list, and if you have multiple domains and it just shows your one main domain, you've got an issue. You have cross-domain tracking issues. If you're using PayPal and you don't have PayPal in here, you still have cross-domain tracking issues. So at the very least, you should make sure you have PayPal in there. But again, we have an entire workshop on that. Just know that in your audit process, you work with your implementation team or with yourself, and you set up cross-domain tracking to make sure that the traffic stays connected, the traffic source stays connected to all the different behaviors and ultimately to the actual end results you want, whether it's a lead or a sale. Again, you care that Facebook gets credit for that, or that Google gets credit for that, or that your email gets credit for that. It's very, very important. So cross-domain tracking, and that's where you would look. Look in your referral exclusions because it's a necessary step in cross-domain tracking. It is not the only step, but it is a necessary step, and you can tell right away in Google Analytics if it needs to be set up just by jumping into this. I think that's sort of the highest level. I'm going to give you one other little pro tip here. In property settings, if you scroll down, this is a newer setting here. But at the very bottom, user analysis, this is by default turned to off. And it means your analytics will start tracking sessions, which is the number of visits, and that's all well and good. But really, we're in a user-centric world now. And that's why Google enabled this setting. Again, this is new, and by default, it's turned off. So you need to turn it on. Then your reports, where they will switch to users, and it'll tell you the number of users who saw your pages, or the number of users who made a goal happen, as opposed to sessions. Much more useful. So I would definitely switch this to on and save that. Okay, so that's kind of the back end, sort of high level audit. There's obviously a lot more back here. We have other workshops for those that really want to get into the nitty gritties of using all of these different things, including things like content grouping, things like that. A little more advanced features that aren't necessary at the basic, is this thing working audit stage that we're talking about here. But that'll be the high level stuff. Then what I'll do is I'll come in and I would actually go through my funnel and I would take a look at real-time reports just to make sure things are working the way that they should be working. So if I'm coming through and I see different pages that are lighting up, as I go through my site, am I seeing the different pages come through? In fact, let me just do this. I'm going to go back to Google's because I know that they will have traffic for us. It's the benefit of a Google merchandise store. They got plenty of traffic all the time. And so you can see in the real-time report that's popping up now, these are the different pages. This is how these pages are coming in. This is the page titles. Does all that make sense? That's all you're looking for. Traffic sources. If you've got a lot of traffic coming through, are the traffic sources reporting the way that you want them to? So here they've got a lot of direct non-traffic, you get some referral traffic, but you also have that social YouTube traffic or affiliate partner traffic that's coming through. So a little more customized traffic sources that Google's done. Finally, I would come into our acquisition reports. I would go into all traffic, and this is by far my favorite report in Google Analytics. I really want to make sure this one is nailed down, is the source medium report, because all the setup that happens in Google Analytics, you can really squeeze the most juice out of all of that by using this report. But it's got to be set up properly. And this is a really great way. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit here. This is a really great way for you to tell if you've got everything set up. So Google Organic, is it achieving, in this case, e-commerce? Well, that's great because that means you've got this traffic of Google Organic and all of the different behaviors and everything that people are going through, ultimately creating a result. And the result is being tied to the traffic source. That's awesome. And if you saw in your view, when you come into it in your own source medium report, if, for example, you see, something like some other site or one of the sites that you own, and it's creating all the sales, but nobody else is getting credit for anything, but you know that they should be. That's how you know you got a broken setup. And in that case, it would be something called cross-domain tracking to go take a look at. But again, e-commerce, if you don't have any e-commerce reporting, but you know that you have sales, well, now you know you've got to go set up e-commerce in Google Analytics. The other thing that you can do from this same report is just check out your goals and say, hey, is my purchase goal completed? And is that actually being attributed to different traffic sources? Notice I'm not at the stage of figuring out which traffic source works or anything like that, because that's actually using the source medium report. And that's not what this is about. This is the overall strategy of doing a quick audit and making sure that as a strategist, I know that the information I'm looking at is probably giving me, or at least the odds are, that it's giving me a useful truth. And what I'm looking for, again, just is it working, or most likely is it working? I'm looking at, is the goal spread out over different traffic sources, or is it just attributed to one traffic source? And if it is, again, just to one traffic source, but nobody else gets credit, and you know deep down that they should be getting credit, then there's some sort of traffic attribution problem, most likely cross-domain, that needs to be set up. And if you come to a goal that isn't working at all, which I don't believe we actually have that issue with Google, in this particular one, they're nice and scattered throughout different traffic sources, which is awesome. But if you did see that where there was a goal that was all zeros, then you know you got to go back and maybe fix that goal. And that's really where I would keep most of this. From an implementation standpoint, you can get a tiny bit more technical in terms of looking at bounce rates and pages per session. If you see a bounce rate that's in the single digits, again, not individual pages, but site-wide, if it shows in the single digits and it's really low, less than 10% in the single digits, that's probably an implementation error, because it's just that's not typically what happens with bounce rate. Bounce rate is normally going to be double digits. At the same time, if you see bounce rate at the 100% level, that's also not right, especially from a site-wide, right? That's kind of looking at the data in aggregate. And that's, again, you don't make any decisions off that. That's not good or bad. Just looking for possible implementation errors. That's where, if you are the implementer, you would go in and figure out, why am I getting a bounce rate that's really low like that? Like, that's just too low. Single digits site-wide just doesn't happen. And if you are not the implementer, but you're on the strategy session and you see a bounce rate in the single digits, you need to go to your implementer and say, hey, can you look at this? Because it just seems that something's off. And you will see that as well. And that's really what this is all about, to be able to help you to do that. Otherwise, it's just coming through here and making sure that information is coming through and getting data. So this is a backup where we already verified that Google Ads in this case has come through, and we know that the data is linked. But this is another thing I like coming through, just to make sure that I can see that data that is supposedly linked, right? In which case I can see all the stuff coming through here. I've got data coming through and showing the number of users by different keywords, campaigns that are coming through. This is all Google Ads in this particular case that are coming through. So I can see all the Google Ads data that's coming through and bringing in different users. Then I can go into Search Console, do the same thing, come into the landing pages that are coming in from Google Organic Search. I can see the queries that are coming in from Google Organic Search. So at least I know that it is connected and is indeed passing through information. I would also jump into the audience reports and take a look just very briefly at demographics. And in this demographics overview, you're going to see just this basic demographic data coming through. It's coming from Google's DoubleClick ad network, but it has to be turned on. You have to link this together. You have to give it permissions. That was something we already showed you in the back end earlier, so you already saw how to do that. But this is a double check. This is just to verify. It's what we call trust but verify. You trust it's set up correctly, but you got to verify this information is there, because this is what you can start doing really cool slicing and dicing and creating segments and all the other fun stuff that you can do, or that your implementer actually actually will be doing as they build reports for you to help you to get the questions answered that you need answers to, so you can, of course, take better marketing actions. And if you don't see this information here, you will see instructions on how to set that up, which again, either you can do on your own or you send over to your implementer. So with that, we will go ahead and wrap it up. What was your one thing? Hopefully it was something simple like, wow, we're not using multiple views and we really need to take advantage of that. Maybe it was something new, like you go into the property settings and now there's that users, display things as users instead of sessions, and that's something new. There's a lot back here that we covered, and this is something you should watch over and over again. Just take one action step, get it to your implementer, or take action on your own if you're the implementer as well as the strategist. Then you come back, watch this again. That's why we have them in the workshop library. Speaking of, if you are looking for a better way to know your numbers, definitely encourage you to visit the Measurement Marketing Academy and become a member. It is measure.tips/start. You will see all the details there. There is a massive, massive amount of handholding and support. It doesn't matter if you're a strategist, if you're an implementer with experience, if you're just trying to keep up to date on all the changes that are happening all the time with Google Analytics and Tag Manager and Data Studio and Facebook Analytics and everything else that's coming out in the world of measurement marketing. The Academy is the one-stop shop. It's a place where everything is. Plus, you get such incredible handholding support, more than I could ever give it justice to here. So please go to that page, measure.tips/start, to learn more about that. Speaking of, if you're already an Academy member, at 3:30 p.m. Eastern today, that is on Wednesday, Measurement Marketing Academy has their office hours member-only Q&A. So of course that is for Academy members only, and assuming that you are an Academy member watching this, make sure to check your email. The link is in Facebook group, or of course in the Academy itself. You can just log in and grab your link so you can join the members Q&A as well. Those are awesome calls. Next week's topic for Workshop Wednesday is another strategy session, because we happen to have 5 Wednesdays this month. Yay, us. Planning your traffic attribution strategy is what we're going to be talking about. And that's going to be an interesting one, because it's not going to be anything that you've heard of before. I promise you. It's a different way of looking at traffic attribution than you've ever heard. So please stay tuned for that one, and I'm looking forward to going through that. So again, that next week's strategy session will be all about that. And of course, if you are not yet on the Workshop Wednesday notification list, make sure that you do that. It's completely free. So if somebody shared this video with you, please join that list. It's measure.tips/WW, stands for Workshop Wednesday. So that's a completely free service that we offer, and make sure you take advantage of that as well. Thank you so much. This has been a strategy session, auditing your Google Analytics setup. Appreciate you watching this workshop, and we will see you on the next one. Take care.